Imagine sua história como uma linha do tempo. Quantos altos e baixos já viveu? Alegrias, dores, superações,
Overcoming obstacles. The truth is that this line is not so linear. We have different factors, internal, external factors that influence all the time our journey and that become unique and complex. But if we could be responsible for some stimuli that could impact in a positive way an entire life, and if we could create opportunities of minimizing vulnerabilities and somehow we could change a trajectory, we believe that yes, this is possible. And that's why, since 2003, we support inspirational projects with the goal of having this social main character. We believe that we can generate an impact today so we can have better versions of these histories in the future. Instituto CPFL, Energy that Transforms Realities.
Muito boa noite, sejam
Good
bem-vindas e
evening,
bem-vindos.
welcome.
Meu nome é Felipe Lavinhati e é com
My
muito
name is Felipe Lambiati, and I'm really excited that Café Filosófico CPFL,
em uma data tão
it's in
especial
Ribeirão
porque
Preto, in a
hoje
special
é o
date,
nível de 94
because
anos
today
desse espaço em que estamos,
is the anniversary of 94 years of this
para uma
theater.
noite que promete entrar
For a
para a
evening
história
that
com
is
esses
going to become
grandes
history with these two speakers that we're going to have today, Sergio Cortella and Rossandro Klinjey. They're here to share some thoughts that they brought in the book that they wrote, The Four Seasons of the Soul, From Anguish to Hope. Today we're going to celebrate another year of the social initiatives of Instituto CPFL, the platform of social investment of Grupo CPFL Energia, here in Ribeirão Preto with the project Playing Life. Before starting, we would like to thank our VP, Luis Ferreira, and on his behalf, I would like to thank all the executives and employees of CPFL Energia here and the authorities, Mr. Duarte Nogueira, the mayor, the Secretary of Culture and Tourism, and other authorities that are here. And for everyone that are here, thank you very much. And to start the ceremony, we invite Dr. Roberto Santori, the director of CPFL. A round of applause.
Boa noite a todos, a todas.
Good evening, everyone.
Muito bem-vindos.
Welcome
essa noite
to this night, to this evening. And first, I would like to greet the mayor, Duarte Nogueira, on his behalf, all the secretaries here, all the authorities that are here, and to greet the president of the board of CPFL Paulista, Luiz Henrique Ferreira Pinto, on his behalf to greet all our employees of here, Ribeirão Preto, and also to greet everyone that are here today. It's a day of joy for CPFL Paulista to be able to get back here with the Institute, with Café Filosófico, in an important moment to all of us. Important for CPFL Paulista, and in this year, we have 5 million customers. That's a landmark that we are really proud of our work and challenges that we have, of the 250 municipalities that we work with, as also Ribeirão Preto. And also, in the anniversary of the Theater Dom Pedro today, the anniversary of 94 years. So it's with a lot of joy that we are here. And I hope that all of you enjoy, so Professor Cortella and psychologist Rossandro on this evening. Thank you.
Agradecer ao Sartori pela fala
So
dele.
I'd like to thank Sartori for his speech. I'm going to ask you to welcome with a round of applause the mayor of the city, Mr. Duarte Nogueira.
Boa noite para todas.
Good evening
para todos, sejam todos
to everyone.
bem-vindos.
Welcome.
Quero agradecer e cumprimentar
I would like to thank and greet CPFL
do presidente
on behalf of the President Roberto Sartori and Luis and Lidiane, who works here in the region of Ribeirão Preto,
minha equipe que está aqui presente,
my team that's here, Daniela,
e
And I would like to say that it's a lot of joy as the mayor of the city to have another edition of Café Filosófico, especially here in the Theater Pedro II. Café Filosófico promoted from CPFL. It's on its 21st anniversary. And as a coincidence, my dad used to say that nothing is random, everything happens for a reason. So today, October 8th, this great theater is 94 years since its opening. So it's also a source of inspiration to all of us here from the city and to our guests. To get Professor Cortella and Dr. Rossandro here is another privilege that we have. I had the joy of being a student from Professor Sergio Cortella in the last millennium. In 1993, I told him that I was 28 years old and he was 38 years old. And we had a course in Fundação Getúlio Vargas of strategical planning for the municipality. I just lost the election in the year of 92, and I tried to learn a little bit more. This is what we always need to do in our lives. And then I met Professor Cortella in other occasions. He's an amazing person, an intelligent man, so it's an opportunity to hear him in person. And Dr. Rossandro, that with him they have this duo that they are launching this book that I had the opportunity to read, The Four Seasons of the Soul. And there's a nice fact that they mention in the book that both are VIP people. Not only very important people, but both are people coming from the countryside area, one of the state of Paraná and the other from Paraíba. So they're going to have the opportunity to tell this to us. So without further ado, we're going to have here a spectacle of intelligence, a philosophical discussion, thinking about existence, where we came from, where we are going to. And this is really important, so we can follow the path of the human nature that's trying to seek happiness, as Aristotle used to say. So congratulations, welcome all of you. So let's see our speakers. Thank you. So I'd like to thank Dr. Duarte Nogueira for his speech. And I'm going to invite to the stage some of the people that are part of the social project Playing Live for a musical presentation. And we can see, hear, and feel this important project that's part of the Front CPFL Young Generation. The students, we have Luis Paulo with them. So with a round of applause, the students.
Senhoras e senhores, boa noite.
So, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. To democratize the access to culture, art, and music is the mission of Social Music Association of Ribeirão Preto. The Symphony for Everyone, that we have the sponsorship of the company. It promotes free classes of music instrument and musical theory for students from the public schools and for the entire population. Currently, the project works in 9 places in Ribeirão Preto, and we have more than 1,400 students that are part of this. Our goal, up to 26, is to impact the lives of more than 2,500 people, among them children, teenagers, adults, elderly people with the expansion of the project and support from sponsors. The project has a sponsorship of CPFL Energia and the support of State Grid and Instituto CPFL through the Front CPFL Young Generation that encourages inspirational projects of music and sports, contributing to build a better future for the next generations.
Para nós da Associação Musical,
So for us, it's rewarding to have the support of Instituto CPFL to fulfill our mission, and it's an honor to be part of this huge event. On behalf of the association, we'd like to thank the group that support us for encouraging democratization of culture and musical teaching. So we request you to turn off your cell phones so everyone can enjoy this beautiful presentation. We wish you all a good evening and a great show.
Com vocês, professor Ivan Rodrigues.
So with you, Professor Ivan Rodrigues.
tico só, um tico lá, está comendo todo meu fubá. Olha se eu me coloco que o fubá se vai, pega no meu pica-pau, um tiro sai. Então eu tenho pena do susto que levou, e uma cuia cheia de fubá eu dou. E alegre já voando e piando, meu fubá, soltando de lá para cá. Um tico só, um tico lá, está comendo todo meu fubá. Olha se eu me coloco que o fubá se vai, pego no meu pica-pau, um tiro sai. Então eu tenho pena do susto que levou, e uma cuia cheia de fubá eu dou. E alegre já voando e piando, meu fubá, soltando de lá para cá. Eu vi um dia porém que ele não voltou, o seu gostoso fubá o vento levou. Triste fiquei, quase chorei, mas então vi, logo depois não era um, mas sim já dois. Quero contar baixinho a vida dos dois, tiveram ninho e filhos depois. Todos agora polaristas estão aqui, comendo todo meu fubá, soltando de lá para cá. Um tico só, um tico lá, está comendo todo meu fubá. Olha se eu me coloco que o fubá se vai, pego no meu pica-pau, o tiro sai. Então eu tenho pena do susto que levou, e uma cuia cheia de fubá eu dou. E alegre já voando e piando, meu fubá, soltando de lá para cá.
Agradecer a todos e todas as
I
integrantes
would like
do
to
projeto
thank
Segunda Vida
all
pela
of the participants of this project for the beautiful presentation. And before we can call our guests to the stage, I would like to once again thank you for all of you who came to the theater and everyone who's following us on YouTube. And also, I would like to leave the invitation both here and online to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can access more than 20 years of content and also to get to know more about our programming. And actually, the questions for our guests are going to be done today via YouTube chat.
Então, já que estamos ao vivo, tanto
So,
aqui quanto pelo
since
YouTube,
we're live
sem mais
here
delongas, vamos
and
chamar
on
de
YouTube,
Mário Sérgio
without
Cortella
further ado,
e
let's
Rossandro
call out
Klinjey, por favor,
Mario
aplausos.
Sergio Cortella and Rossandro Klinjey. Please, let's give it up.
Vou apresentar os nossos convidados de hoje.
I'm
O
going
Mário
to
Sérgio
introduce our
Cortella,
guest. Mario Sergio Cortella is a philosopher, writer, speaker with master's and doctorate in the Catholic University of São Paulo, where he taught for many years. He was the Secretary of Education between 81 and 92, and he had been assistant of Professor Paulo Freire. He wrote several books in the areas of education, theology, philosophy, and he has books such as The Labyrinths of Moral, Nor Angels Nor Demons, a choice between virtues and addiction, and To What Things Are, all by the editor Papiro. Rossandro Klinjey is a psychologist, professor, consultant in education and human development, and he funded Educa Empresa, and he's a partner of the RK Institute that works with emotional development. He also teaches in the happiness course at Unicamp and the Masters of Organizational Psychology of the Catholic University of the Rio Grande do Sul. He likes to help translate psychology into an easier language, and he became one of the main speakers in personal development in Brazil. His narrative helped me educate the necessary learning. I choose to be happy, the 5 phases of forgiveness, and these are books that position him as a reference in the topics that come from emotional development in both individual and collective spheres. With that said, let's go to our event. Cortella and Rossandro, welcome. And to start with our philosophical coffee, I would like to start by asking you to talk about the title of the book. Why is it called The 4 Seasons of the Soul? Well, it's interesting because Immanuel Kant, one of the biggest philosophers in history, in 2024, we celebrated 300 years of his birth. He was born in Germany in April 22nd, 1924, and he has an amazing work, especially in ethics. He is very quoted by me and by Cláudio Barros Filho, who was born in Ribeirão Preto, 1965, in October 65. He's someone who's a specialist also in this matter. Something that it's interesting, which is the source of the name of the book, which is related to Kant, is that all of what he says, it allows us to understand, because when he said, whatever you can't tell how you did it, don't do it. Whatever you can't tell how you do it, don't do it. If there are reasons not to tell, these are the reasons you shouldn't do it. So how can we tell that? So I think it's something we can tell. Well, it's a pleasure to be here with you. It's great to be here with Cortella. I consider him a master. I admire him, and I always want to honor him. And when we thought about this, we thought about a very clear condition. We have a very strong will when we look at the migration birds that always follow the summer. Whenever it starts to get cold, they migrate. Human beings can't do that, and we shouldn't do that, because in life, life has many seasons. There are hard days, there are happy days, sad days. Some days we're receiving our child being born with the happiness of a new life in our home, and some days we're saying goodbye to someone we love deeply, and none of these experiences can be avoided. Actually, they have a very deep teaching moment that we wanted to bring into this metaphor of the seasons, so that we could think about how the soul or the being, the spirit or the human mind, how does the individual from the philosophical and psychological point of view flow through the oceans and flow through the seasons, and how does sometimes we get learning, pain, reflection. That's why we chose from anguish to hope, because at the end, we have hope at the end. So regardless of difficult days, there is an invitation of some moments that make us be reborn. from individual and collective existences. And this idea of hope that is in this path obviously is not ordinary. So it can't be just a mere desire or expectation. It has to be an application, a decision, a search. And of course, all four seasons mean that the changes, even though they're not always pleasant, they're not always welcome, they can't be refused, they make it so we can mold and create our condition along the way. And this title it was proposed by Rossandro as precisely the expression of the possibility of walking towards existence, thinking about the changes that are never terminal, because at the end of the day, terminality is exactly the feeling of the seasons, and they are one after the other. They are in a sequence, they never finish. And in this sense, life can also be seen this way. For some people, life is succeeded by another life outside of this life. For some people, life is succeeded by the life you're leaving here that continues on in other people. But we don't understand at all that we should, even though sometimes we are kind of closed in anguish situations, that cannot be a definitive situation. That's why we have the subtitle and the title, which is The Four Seasons of the Soul. Some, as of late, seem like they are in a merciless summer. And of course, others would like, in a specific time, when we have times of a lot of heat, they would like a little bit more winter. They're even yearning for winter in a way, like today. If between today and tomorrow the temperature dropped to 10 degrees, we would have moments of joy and a huge possibility of complaining about the cold. And so this succession is not something that should be completed or concluded. It is a process. Yes, and you know what's interesting, Cortella? When we look at people who want to picture a time and stay fixed on it, this is when we have hurt. When you have hurt is when you have a picture of a moment where you take a picture of the person or the event that created that feeling. And if you stay with a fixed view, you're going to have resentment. So it's going to generate hurt, hate, and everything that is related to that. So it's really about looking at one season and staying there. Like people and feelings aren't a movie that goes on. And sometimes the person can't understand that the person changed, but they don't want to give up their scapegoat, the accusation, because whenever they can, they want to say, hey, you failed here. So it's like someone is setting in stone one of your seasons, or like Cortella says in the book, your infernal moments, which we all go through, but we also have our celestial moments. Because as we said with yin and yang, that symbol of Buddhism, where you have the element of complementary light and shadow of human behavior, we need to look at the individual as someone who is migrating, who is flowing through that process. Because whenever we're stuck in a picture, we are not looking at the picture that is moving and the movie that is still playing. And hurt is not something that you have to not feel, but it cannot overpower you. I really like a great thinker who was a doctor, Pedro Nava. He was born in Juiz de Fora. He's a great memorialist in Brazil. He has a great work called Chest of Bones in a free translation. And he said, I don't have hate, I have a memory. So hurt is possible because at the end of the day, when someone upsets us or we get upset by ourselves, I usually say that hurt has its place, but it cannot overpower your life because then it would lead to bitterness and not hurt itself. You know, and I know people who are bitter. And their main joy is being bitter, being deeply sad. And what gives them vital energy is a destructive perception upon themselves and life itself. So they use one of Freud's inspirers terms, which is, death energy. So whatever is tragic, morbid, is someone that you avoid saying in the morning, how are you? It's true. And you know that these people, they are so fixated in this part of life. And we see, we have like our WhatsApp groups, family WhatsApp groups, and we also have like subscription families. There are several channels you don't want, but you have to have them. And if you are laughing, because probably you're thinking about someone in your family or even some people in your family. But when we live with these people and you're saying, that they're stuck in this deeper hurt and they're going to be more connected to this feeling, they start to be people that are very hard to live with.
And I remember that at work I was with someone was like this. When you're going to talk with this person at university, you need to have some medicine. I said, no, I'm not going to do this. Because someone asked me, have you wished something bad for this person? And I said, no. When I noticed that everything that I could wish for this person can be worse of the person became. So what the person chose for their lives, they have this winter feeling and this infernal feeling. Then when you say the mouth gets what we have in our hearts, so to have this distorted view of the world, at least after work, we finish working and we can go home. But when you leave with this person, then it's more complicated, right? As when you have cable, you need to choose. You can cancel the package. So it's not something fatal. It's not something of determination. Immanuel Kant, that I mentioned before, he's known for a sentence that's hard to understand. Clóvis de Barros is an expert on this. I'm not, but he is an expert. When Kant would remember that freedom is to do what you don't want to do. That's strange to assume what does this mean, because he's talking about what you need to do. So to do what you don't want, because it's not in your desire, but it's your job to do it. So it's moral imperative. And to be free is to obey towards your moral imperative. So it brings an issue when I joke about canceling your subscription, or you can migrate to a different cable. It means to have choices, but there are some circumstances that you cannot do this. You are so enclosed in that attention and caring, and leaving that is going to harm you more. So it's going to become an obligation. Thank God that we have something special. That's forgetting. It's one of the most beautiful things that I have read so far. It's a great physician that for many years he taught in the Federal University of Rio Grande do Sul, an Argentinian, Ivan Izquierdo. He passed away, and he was an expert in memory, brains, and he has a beautiful text about the role of forgetting on preserving mental health. The role of forgetting in preserving mental health. Because I think that the most difficult thing is, when I say Rossandro, I will never forget what you did. This for sure is more harmful to me that I don't forget than to you that don't even remember that I'm not forgetting this. It's true. It's funny. There's a classic saying that the heart is a poison that you take to kill the other person. And he said something appropriate. There's a moment for this. There's a moment for pain, or there's a moment where I'm in a relationship that's difficult. I cannot change the channel. I cannot unsubscribe. I cannot change my cable. You have an elderly parent, an elderly father, but now he demands some care. Should I do the same, or I'm going to do something different to treat this person as this person didn't treat me? I will love this person as this person didn't love me. But sometimes the person maybe needs to recognize that didn't build resources to face this. People are some in toxic relationships because they were destroyed in the childhood or after this, in relationships that destroyed their self-esteem, that they see themselves, that they don't deserve anything more than that. So we have the affection that they have a human menu checking who you want, what you want, or those who you don't want. the things that you like, so you have this codification. And it's sad because sometimes people, they end up being just a place when people dispose their garbage because you are not able to love yourself in your solitude. So in this way, convincing people that I just wait for the winter, I also deserve the spring and the summer, because if people tell you that you don't deserve more than what you have, you're not going to open to life. So sometimes you need to have ruptures to find something. Of course, people are afraid of this when they are alone, because maybe they think that they don't have another place to be. That person that convinced you that there's no life without that person, but it's the other way. With that person, there's no life. So the people that are here, that are with us, they can teach us, they can take us to different paths, as we can do to other people. When we think about 4 seasons, the possibility of anguish, we cannot discard this. Another German philosopher, he would say that anguish is this full possibility. The feeling of anguish is a feeling of nothing. So when we have this feeling of nothing, you are available for anything. So with that, even though anguish is not something that we enjoy to keep this, it has a collaborative element. When you, at some point, you understand anguish as a feeling without an object. When you're sad for some reason, when you're happy for something, when you're angry for something, in anguish, you don't have the object. You wake up, you as a psychologist, you may hear this. I don't know, I'm a little bit strange, there's something, and they hold on their neck like they are suffocating, and I don't know. And this perception of anguish as nothing, when you realize that and you feel that nothing is there because you cannot define that, you open yourself for different possibilities. So with that, without having optimistic perception, a full optimistic perception, there's an element that we cannot discard. When anguish gets to me in different moments of my life, in my trajectory, when anguish got close to me, I had to handle this. I cannot just sit down and imagine that just because I have hope, so my desire is a right, it's going to solve everything. No, my desires are not rights. They are in different places, they have connection, but they are not identical. That's why when psychology helps us to handle this, it's not to stop me from having anguish, it's to know how to handle with this. For sure. I'm going to make some comments about this. I think there's a video, Felipe, that we will see. It's the book. We had some people reading the book, so we're going to stop you to read some parts of the book that were recorded for you to see just a teaser what we're going to find in the book they wrote the book that they wrote together. So the first video.
Olá, fundo do poço.
Hi, Swell. I'm here again. I will not avoid this anymore. Before citizenship, I will request. In this territory that I cannot escape, I don't feel a foreigner, because on this I have the roots of my wings. I don't belong to just this place. So to stay is not what I have. I'm just going by. It's not a goodbye, but a see you soon is what I say. Quite soon I come back to be full again. So I cry, so outside I can smile. I will suffer here, so I can know myself. I'll have the hand that will save me from the world, and sometimes from myself. Soon I will get back, aware of how this space is important in this geography of my soul. This was really good. It seems like I did this. The person really knows about this. It was a poem. In this discussion that we had, we noticed that there's a place that we cannot go around, that's the swell. We cannot take selfies from that. We cannot get something when you are in that place, so only when you're in Dubai or visiting Disney, so we cannot avoid this. We need to do this, as you have mentioned. Psychology is talking about anguish, is to give a warning to us that this exists. The life's not simple. It demands courage, as Guimarães Rosa used to say. We need to have this availability to face this, but it's also a question. If I, throughout when I was building myself as an individual, if I don't have the tools to face this, or if the people that should provide the emotions to handle this, they didn't build this, but they destroyed my skills. So we have Sartre that's going to tell us, don't ask what people have done to you, but what you're going to do to what people made with you. It's not to have a deep archaeology of why. That's a question that people usually ask, believing that the answer to this question is the solution of all the problem. But it's how I'm going to do this, even though I don't know why someone hurt me, why someone cheated on me, why my father left me, why my mother had some issues. So how I'm going to deal with the elements that I had. So it's to be more mature. And rock bottom, it's an invitation for you to get there to see that's a desert. As we have a poem, we don't have any walls, and you need to be the hand that's going to help yourself, because you have the right to feel hurt, to feel resentful, and look at the world and say, no one is seeing the pain that I'm going through. As Cortella mentioned, that's the reason that a lot of young people, they cut themselves at schools, and they think that may be hurting themselves because they don't even know how to explain the pain that they are feeling. That at some point you see that other people, they have their pains and they anguishes and they move on. So you need to get up and overcome this. You know that who created the song with this? It was a researcher of the state of São Paulo, Professor Paulo Vanzolini, one of the most genius people that this country had, that wrote this song. And Paulo Vanzolini, an expert in zoology, he went to medical school, then he had a doctorate in Harvard, and during the day he would research. It was the initial creation, our support of research in the state of São Paulo. So during the day he would do some researches, and at night he would go to some bars. He wrote a song that it's similar to Four Seasons, that's Honda. So during the night, I go through the city. So it could be at night, I go through the city looking for you without finding me. But then he would be a psychologist and not a physician, so he did this coming around. So I don't know if you remember when the song in the 60s, it was really successful with Illustrated Night, a person called Mario, but his nickname was this. There's a part of saying, get up and come around. But then there's another line that said, recognize your fall and don't feel down. Recognize that you fell. That recognizing this, it's the starting point to the how, of instead of going the why and the poem, that you could get back this part. I really like when you use the word foreigner, because in the philosophical view and literature, the idea of being a foreigner, or when we think about Milton Nascimento, when I go after me, to know where I can find myself, it's only possible when we understand that a foreigner, something different, is the one that I don't recognize myself. Not by chance, the word that we use is being alienated. So who is going to introduce this concept in philosophy? I just mentioned Germans, but Kant and Heidegger, we have Hegel, and he would talk about alienation. So the Latins would use an expression to talk about the other person, that's alter, but they use an alternative word that would be the strange. I can be strange to myself, to be strange to me, or to be a foreigner in myself. So it creates more anguish than hope, because hope is when I refuse the possibility of being a foreigner inside of myself. So first recognize the fall, don't get down, and get up again. But it's not easy. Otherwise, you wouldn't have people in your office.
Yeah, how would I pay my bills if it weren't for other people's trauma? Actually, without diagnosis in any area of life, there's no healing. That's why I want to get a part of the book. Let's go to another part of the book to open the discussion. About the waiting time, Cortella says, this possibility of having everything at the same time now shows that this symphony in situations shows there's lack of a capability of maturity or patience. When we look towards these paths where you're always seeking to have everything at your service without a waiting time, without understanding this idea of everything having its time, this does not mean a setback. It means to have developed patience. Yes, patience does not mean being slow. Being slow, it means you cannot have effective action. Patience means you can mature. And I say that I'm a hillbilly. I was born in the countryside of Paraná, and I live in São Paulo. However, my roots are also in the rural world. Or, as we mentioned here, VIP, because I came from the countryside of Paraná. And of course, since you are from Paraíba, you remember how much we lose our patience because we end up getting away from the countryside. And agriculture is the art of patience. You can't make the butterfly leave the cocoon before it's time. So you can't make bananas mature before. I can do it through chemistry, but it's not going to taste the same. So patience does not mean slow. And the idea of living everything, like we were saying, everything at the same time in the now generates agony, an internal struggle, because since you can't handle that and I can't handle that, the situation is we have to live 4 seasons at the same time simultaneously. And since this is a rushing of the natural order of things, it generates an impossibility of fruition. And at this time, you need patience. This notion that seems like maybe something that comes from older people, in large scale, it comes like guidance. We lose a lot of this condition as we speed up our everyday lives through the use of technology. You and I don't have the patience anymore for a lot of things. I remember I was born on March 5th, and my birthday in my city when I was a child, I left my city when I was 13. My birthday started to be prepared in January, which meant my mom, my aunts, my uncles, my dad started making all of the sweets for my anniversary that would be, or for my birthday that would be in March. They would get everything, put it away, and make it ready, and we would live the birthday that was in March since January. And this festivity would last 20 more days, not because it was a party, but because there were a lot of food. There was a lot of food left and a lot of things left, and we were always going back to it and getting together. So there was kind of an elasticity of fruition that wasn't just here now at this second. So I take the picture, I have the Insta, and that's it. And then I go to the next instant. So I'm sure that we are able to generate a lot of suffering because of the lack of patience. It's true. And there's a very common scene. I don't know if this would happen here in the past. Maybe there would be a power shortage. Then our parents would light candles. They would start playing guitar. Some of them want to tell horror stories, and we didn't even know how we were going to sleep at all They were going to talk about politics, horror stories, politics.
Não deve ser, mas não deve.
Well, it shouldn't be, but, And now we see that when the power came back on, people would go, "Aw." It's interesting that we would be unhappy because the lights were off and the TV was off, but we could still live. There was another time when we would look each other in the eye, talk, listen to stories about how your grandmother met your grandfather, for example. So my grandma was making the veil of a bride. There was a man playing the accordion, and my grandma was listening to the man play, and she said, "What a handsome man." And the cousin said, "Well, you're making his bride's veil." And she said, "No, this is mine. I'm going to have him for myself." And this is what happened. Did she get the veil and the grandfather? Yes, both of them. And she married my grandfather. And we would hear that. And now we don't have that time anymore when we can actually look at people. And it's, as Zygmunt Bauman says, it's a quick world that ends up generating a tired society. This is what we're going through. And in the technology area, we say a constant partial attention. So you're talking to me, looking at WhatsApp, you're watching a show, looking at Instagram, you're not really anywhere, not in one moment. Everyone is stuck in a sort of black mirror, black square that makes us disconnect from people, wasting time, wasting fruition. And why does today people are going back to rock bottom? Because when they're there, they don't learn. Because it's too quick. Recognizing the fall takes patience, and rising yourself up again requires patience. Some people, Cortella, they barely go from one frustrating relationship going right into another. They don't ask themselves, what went wrong? How can I correct that? And they accumulate them as disappointment medals because they don't want to take the patience, take the time, have the patience to learn from each lesson of life, especially from the ones that we don't like the most, but they are the ones that teach us the most. And it's interesting that you mentioned that, because talking about the past with some kind of feeling of reminiscence is not something that can put us there. You're not leaving things in the past of things that should come back now, because we don't want to go back. A lot of the things that have happened to us, we don't want them back now, but a lot that has been, we want to be in the now. That's why when we go through the seasons, we cannot substitute. We have seasons that, even though they are defined in name, they are not really the climate or the condition. And we use that, small summer, small winter, to talk about moments when there's a mix. So living in the now is not deleting what has been completely, but also not bringing whatever is necessary, and, not having that past as an anchor, because that moment has passed. So when you think about this condition of dealing with the instant without abandoning what we had at another time is very remarkable. And this tiredness that we see in large scale is because we don't have the energy to do that. We cannot live the whole time in an attention state. So living out loud, having to be connected all the time. Sometimes it is necessary to shut down and disconnect. Philosophy has never been more necessary, not only as a hype, because it kind of went into a hype, but also because it's bringing very important topics to surface. Imagine in the last 10 years, we've had an ascension of philosophic reflection in many areas. Before, even a while ago, those who were philosophers, they were seen as vagabonds or losers. And there's still a valuing of a thought, people who want to ask about life and not only live it. So it doesn't mean to replace as if you're just discarding something immediately. And when you say that, even before I actually got to know Cortella, I heard his debate in my city, and I pretty much didn't sleep because I was like, I'm going to debate with Cortella. What am I going to do? So one time I was teaching and people were talking about hopelessness. So in a country where a philosopher is now a celebrity, we can't lose hope. People want to hear someone who talks about something hard. You know, a lot of people want to hear people talk about only easy things. So this is the time when we look and we say, these reflections are important because they invite us to look through another perspective, not in this time that promises everything and nothing is delivered, that makes you feel empty and anguished, where you're always feeling not whole because you want more and more and nothing's flowing. And one day you get your wardrobe and you see that there are clothes that you've never even worn, so that you can have a kind of minimalism, not only in shopping, but also in life, focusing on whatever is essential to you. Perhaps shutting off reading. This is a movement that we know that even when you download a book, a digital book, the capability of memorizing that book is much smaller than a physical paper book that you can touch, feel, read, and flow in that process. We're going through kind of like a bad effect. People are so connected to that world, that quick world. And I know that people who are here are feeling that they have this these thoughts and these feelings. And of course, you were able to sold out 1,200 tickets in 8 minutes, because I know that that's an issue. But when you're looking for time, even to have diagnoses, because sometimes you can't, like you don't want to go to a healthcare professional that would look at you and give you a diagnosis in 15 minutes. You're not going to believe in the diagnosis or the professional. You want them to look you in the eye, but you want them to be quick with everyone except for you, which is ironic. And philosophy, there's a risk now. When seasons are around us, there's a risk of understanding them as kind of like a consolation prize. So sometimes I fear like philosophy is going to be seen as a meditation that is going to help soothe nerves and soothe solace. I remember that for a long time teaching at the Catholic University in São Paulo, I would start my class, and this was a philosophy class for first years. So first years of law students, medicine, journalism, economy. And I would start the class by saying, you are here to feel bad. If you want to feel good, you can go to the park, you can go dancing, you can go to the circus. Here is where you're going to feel bad. And feeling bad is not feeling disgust with the situation, but it means having within you some kind of action or something, some restlessness that would lead you to meditate. So it's that saying that if you're a happy oyster, you're not going to create a pearl. So it's valuing desperation, misery, valuing what hurts you. It's not only about that. It's providing the possibility of understanding how much these circumstances can be useful in our lives. And when you remember this perception exactly in terms of how much the now removes this possibility from us, I remember that every now and again someone would ask us, and they still do, they would ask me, don't you have a course of dynamic reading to suggest? Because I wanted to read very quickly. And I would say, but that's the opposite of what reading is. Someone who likes reading, they want it to take a long time. And actually, one of the things that people who like to read do is when the book is ending, you kind of postpone the end. You start reading slower so that the book doesn't end. Sometimes you put it in your lap, you pause. And I remember I noticed this difference because a lot of the times that I had to buy a book, that I would maybe get a referral and the person at the store would bring it to me. When it was a big book, I would be happy. I would say, oh, okay. And I started following some young people to the bookstore. And when there was a big book, they would be scared and say, oh my God, is that the size of the book? So whatever was happy for some was actually creating anguish for other people. So with technology, which is now some cases of AI that allow you to have dynamic reading of what's not necessary. So it can just summarize for you. You don't have to read everything. But imagine reading a huge book in 6 paragraphs, reading Dante's Divine Comedy in 20 minutes. This is something that would bring us deep sorrow. Can you imagine if Beethoven's 9th Symphony was short? it would generate desperation. So it's interesting for us to extend. So I don't want a life that is long just because it's long, but also I don't want it to be too short where it's like, hey, I came, I saw, I did it, and I'm going. No, we need to have an entire set of feelings. That's why we like things that take a long time, that go far. There are cities where they value beer and craft beer, and that craft beer that takes hours and hours, and you talk and you just really say, you talk amenities, nothing's gonna go anywhere. The only reason for being there is to stay together and stay alive and living in several moments, and of course, bringing anguish with you wherever you go. Yes, of course. And it's when you want things quick, it doesn't work. And we need to have the capability and, this leisure time and time when you're not really doing anything is really important for you to enjoy the experiences. Do we have another video? We have a video of Cortella in a book.
About taking risks, Cortella says, to try, it has in the idea of danger, because when you try something, it puts us in risk, but predictability, it puts the risk away, but on the other hand, it brings monotony as a result. Nelson Rodrigues would call some people of the fool of being objective, because all the time they would say, life it is what it is, so this objectivities, it's lead to an incapability of dreaming, thinking, and also desiring. When we are restricted to the universe of the identical, we are fools of being objective. The same place, the same ideas, the same flowers, the same garden. Of course, it reduces the repertoire that we can have. Interesting because Nelson Rodrigues, when addressing the topic being stupid for objective, he would talk about soccer. The word that he's used, sometimes he used when you're analyzing soccer games. He would root for Fluminense, and he was able to lose the reason when he was analyzing the games of his team. So he had passion about this. As passion, you get your mind away of everything, so you are able of putting objectivity away. And when we were talking about, he was talking about soccer, he would talk about the ones who, when looking at the soccer, they were not able to see the charming side of this, the surprise about this, how dangerous it would be, and the idea of being stupid regarding objectiveness is there people that had this concrete idea. No, here is like this. Life is like this. There's no other way. Get real. If there's something that hope denies, is getting real, because hope is threatening the idea of getting real. Get real, it means that I will be okay with that. So I used the example, I think that you have seen when you put water in a glass, the water gets the shape of the glass. It gets the shape of the glass. So it's stuck there. The hope is what overflows this. I'm not going to do this in respect of the theater, but overflowing this, what changes, what humidifies life is going over, is overflowing this. The stupid people regarding objective, they all the time they say, get it real. And it would say, no way, I want hope. And in that sense, Adélia Prado, another day, I was talking to another person about a book, We Live More and We Live Well, and she would quote this writer, Adélia Prado, I don't want the knife and the cheese, I want the hunger. And this is exactly the denial of getting real. And the society that people, they have answers that are ready. We live in a world, how internet, we have this square of speech and everyone wants to be right and people don't want to hear one another. So what we're seeing, this polar situation, and it's getting tiring when we have these people one against the other. Like the world, we have the good and the bad, and good, it's me and people around me, the ones that think like me, and bad, the others that think different from me. So we have these different characters dividing families that it's hard to have to live together. So when we notice that life requires from us hope, there's a fundamental thing in this hope. That's hope. We have this when the other is an agent to be the one that provides hope. Sometimes hope is not a solution for my pain. For example, you are in a day that you lost someone that you love, and there's a person that you knew in your childhood, and the person goes there, and it doesn't help your pain, but you are sharing that condition. I'm here with you, and I know what you're feeling because I've been through this with my mother. I've lost my mother. So we realize the other as an instrument, as when we are out of this more egocentric way that you think that the world is around your pain and everyone needs to comfort you, but you understand that maybe in this planet, that's the same time as at school to learn, it's an workshop to work in a hospital that we can heal and take care of one another, is the patient that realizes that to cure this disease, you need to help the other patient that's feeling worse than you. And this medicine that we have called hope is what's going to heal the person themselves. The hope that I provide and also becomes hope to myself. And danger come when we refuse to try what can be tested without being fatal. One of the things that suits a child is to hear the same story all the time because they can predict that. One of the things that we enjoy music, and you know this because you are married to a singer, is that music, it suits us, even though it brings some disturbance at some point, because you know the next part. One of the things that we have desperation is when we don't know what's about to come. The child likes to hear the same story the same way. Children watch the same cartoon in a repetitive way. But don't you get tired? No, they feel safe, and it suits them. That's why people like the same place, the same flowers, to sit on the same place, to eat the same thing, to talk about the same topic. This thing that's the same all the time is reassuring. So we need to disturb a little bit, because what brings joy to the summer is the winter. What brings joy to the winter is the summer. What makes you, when you see different moments, you have the desire for the other part that's not there yet, but it's going to bring you a different perspective. Otherwise, as you have mentioned, it would be monotonous. The good thing about music is not identical, otherwise it would be monotonous. We would repeat that. So we have this with life. The fact that sometimes when we don't have the experience of danger, we like to dive in this stupid idea of being objective, so we feel safe. So don't move. Pretend that everything's okay and no one's going to notice you. That's good, but it's mediocre. So it's the comfort zone, the most dangerous place and uncomfortable for those who want to grow. And when to change the season, we go through some pain, some grief. That in psychologists, we say that every growth that you go through, we lose some part of the belonging. And you are part of a group that you have people that drink a lot, and you stop drinking, we realize that you cannot keep these relationships. So with people that everyone decided to not study anymore and you want to keep studying, you are going to realize that those relationships are going to become tense because you're going to lose this belonging. And we have some forces that want to keep you on this place. When you want to grow, we have a loving force that stops you from growing, a loving force that stops me from growing. How is that? People that love you, that like you, and they say, don't try this, maybe it will go wrong. This happened to me. And it's not that they don't want you to achieve that. They are afraid that you can get hurt. But you need to explain to them that maybe if you do this, it's going to be different with you. Maybe you should try this. And that actually to grow is not something that go against this family, but it's going to show that you're being the result of this family that provided you that you could go further. There's another strength, that's envy. People that are close to you and say, who do you think that you are? You are not going to live here. You are not better than anyone. And there's another part that the people that are above you, some of them, they tell you, we don't have space for another person here, so keep in your place. But there are the people that say, come here, that I'm going to show you a path to get here quicker. So you are there in the middle deciding who you're going to listen to, the forces that go against your desire, so you can be comfortable on this place. And you can blame someone, oh, a boring teacher in the university that traumatized you, that's why you quit college, and or your resistance, your courage, your persistency. Because sometimes the seasons stop because we want them to stop for a comfort zone, for something that we know. There's a moment to hear the story over and over, to listen to the song over and over and over, but there's a moment of building a different trajectory and change the music. Do you remember when you used to do this? To change the music, how hard it was? Yes, we remember this. I think there's a video, right, Felipe? It's about you just mentioned. It's a part, your part of the book. About giving name to the pain, Rossandro says. Human body is more than just a biological machine. It's a deep reasoning and complex of emotions, thinking, and experiences. We are integrated beings, and each aspect of our being is in constant dialogue. Pains that we don't express are like hurts in the soul, and the impact of these hurts in our mind can be deep and last for a long time. The pain that can have a name that we cannot translate into words, it can go deep in our unconscious. That as a strategy to go by, as Freud described, this repression is only temporary. The pain will come back and we will feel again and again, sometimes transformed in a symptom that will haunt the body. At this point, the need of naming our pains becomes fundamental. To give name of what we are feeling is to recognize and face the reality of what's hurting us. It's the first step in a healing process and to have a new meaning. It's to change the relationship with our own pain. There are moments that we can feel that's a pain that's so big that we can even name it. There are moments that you can only feel this. There's something that David mentioned about this that states, "Oh Lord, I know that you are close to me even though when I don't have the words." Sometimes we don't have the words, sometimes we don't have the name or the diagnosis is missing. And there's a moment for that. But to recognize the fall, we need to recognize where this pain is coming from, to name this, how I'm going to act. If I don't know, it's fear, if it's envy, if it's anger, if it's fault. When I can provide a name to this pain without accusing me, I can grow. One of the challenges that we have in changing seasons is to stay in a chapter that's temporary. The blame, to me, once I was trying to explain this to a patient in the office about blame, we're talking about this. It's something personal that he was telling me. It was his blame, not the patient. And talking about this idea that this is important, but it works like when we have the smell of methane gas. So if there's gas that it's important to smell it, so it will tell you about something that you need to do. We need to go there and stop that. So you can or not smell the gas anymore and say, oh, we have a problem, I don't know what to do. When I go through this guilt, I go to this destroyed view. When I blame people or I blame myself, and I keep on this chapter of blaming everyone, and I become my worst enemy. One of the events that a person will grow up is when we have auto-amor. The self-love is when you go through a process that radical acceptance of you, that for some people it's an inviting, is an invitation to say, if I accept myself, I will not evolve anymore. A great thinking, Carl Rogers, the creator of one of the strengths of psychologists, he said there's a paradox on self-awareness. When you accept yourself, you change. Because when you accept yourself, you are not your worst enemy anymore. You're not the person that's going to be blamed anymore. And all this energy that you are using to destroy you, to despise you, it's available for you finally to change. And when you change is when you finally stop feeling this guilt for a behavior that you don't want to have anymore. But of course, there's a delay of what I want to be, what I would like to be. There's a dynamic that we are going to leave this old creature so the new creature can be there. But there's an anguishing process that, Paulo, that you mentioned, the good that I want to provide and the bad that I know that's bad and I want to do this, but I still do it because there's a diagnosis that I see patterns of behavior that I need to give up to be a new being. But it comes back to our previous discussion. It takes time for this new to come. And it always comes, as in the music, for the people that understand. The new will always come, unless that you love the past and you don't see that the new is always coming. As like me, I thought that the music would say, you, that's not good, and you don't see that the new always come. What Rossandro remembers is that the appreciation of the self-love, also self-awareness, we need to be cautious when we go in this misleading situation. One thing is self-stimuli, and the other thing is not to be self-aware. So when I accept myself in some conditions, to look what I have, that I can appreciate, that's important, that's relevant, instead of going to a place to decrease myself. The other thing is to manage that I'm more than I am, so that I have possibilities, conditions, capabilities that go beyond the ones that I have. One part today of the families, especially the ones that grew up in the last 30 years, are taking care of children, and they are creating them this misleading view instead of self-stimuli. So everything you can stimuli with the idea you are the one, that's right, you're going to be the best, when it's necessary to indicate for that person, to provide information, what are the limitations and the possibilities, instead of only saying that they are the best, like the intense desire. The continuous stimuli would transform this person into what that person wants to be, because they cannot assume that they already is that without being that. So self-awareness, the self-love as a condition of pacification, of action, but being careful to not go in this self-misleading condition.
And actually, I thought about what we were saying in relation to this, my city. Everyone has, the prettiest student. And she came to me and she said, Professor, I'm going to marry whatever, the cutest boy in university. And at the end of the class, she said, well, since everyone left and you're the psych teacher who always answers our questions, what do you think? And I said, what was it going to be? Because I didn't really want to tell her my opinion. Oh, it's going to be wherever. Are you going? Yes, I'm going. But tell me what you know. Do you really want to know my opinion? Yes. I think it's not going to work. And she was like, why? Well, you are Eros and he's Apollo. So I learned as a married man is that marriage works when you want to serve the other person and not when you want someone to serve you. When you have two deities, who's going to cultivate who? How is that going to work? But okay, I will go to your wedding, and I did go 6 months later. they actually ended the marriage and there was violence involved. So when you raise children this way, in the wrong way, which is precisely having this filter between self-esteem and a pathological narcissism, parents find out how they were wrong when, spoiled one marries spoiled two. They're not available for a relationship that requires service, really, because they were both used to being served. Saying to your child, you're a genius, because you watch less TV, you turned your phone off, you got a 10. You got an A. So whenever they get a C, they're not going to tell themselves, oh, I'm wrong. It's just that they didn't do the right effort and they're going to be able to achieve it again. But if you say you're a genius when you get a C, you think you're a failure. And you see it as a character flaw and not a behavior flaw. That's why it's important that during the seasons of life, we're sowing. And in a lot of what we sow, building our soul in the character of having children and giving them the ability to do things is exactly what Winnicott, a great psychiatrist, would say. A good enough mom is the one that becomes unnecessary one day. And the same is valid for a father, because they're creating children so that they are autonomous, so that not the world is going to conform to them, but they need to understand that there was a world before them, so they can conform to the world, even if it's someone who came to really revolutionize the world. They have to accept what is given to then show their own story. Unfortunately, what we live today is a tragedy in schools. Parents want the school to be for their child, and they make WhatsApp groups like mom and dad of whatever class becomes a huge pain for teachers, which is like the medieval fires and it's burning at the stake, because they don't use that as a pedagogical discussion, but they want to hurt people who are not rivals. They're there to help build better human beings. Yes, and there's a lot of anguish.
Com certeza foi professor.
Surely teachers started clapping. Yeah, teachers started clapping here, I'm sure. There's a lot of anguish in your reflection, because they show some of what we think in relation to our lifetime. So this means what we share, what we do in our existence, because at the end of the day, when we end up warping and, well, not raising people right, children, young people, and ourselves, it's something that is crazy. I use an expression that I didn't create. Well, I actually hear it all the time. I didn't say it for the first time, but it says that the world that we're leaving for our children depends on the children that we're leaving for the world. And when there is a warping of expression, when there is a warped view on everyday existence and connections where we don't find the responsibility, we're always looking to place blame on teachers as if they had 100% of the load and the share in raising that person, is something that is very damaging. Today, the school space is very barren. It feels like a movement where the counterpoint is very serious. We have scenes of brutality, and at the end of the day, in some societies, the teachers are pretty much the only adults that will tell someone what to do in a day. Sit down, grab your book, study. They are used to being little kings in their lives. And this raising, when it says, that this is kind of like they live in sovereignty, it's very difficult. I'm not excusing myself of our task as a teacher, as a professor, but there is definitely they're trying to bring this responsibility to the teachers. And I don't want to go too long in this topic, but let's not confuse education with scholarization. When you have education, it's just the general process that is responsibility of the family. And the school literacy and things like that is a part of it. Nowadays, you cannot have a personal trainer, personal stylist, and you're going to have a personal mother and a personal father as well. And you're going to just send the task over and say, hey, look what happened, as if you are outside of that situation. This is something that generates a lot of anguish on both sides. Exactly. This movement of really giving someone else the responsibility and not being the adult in the room, they create a generation of children that feel that they don't belong. They don't feel like they're a part of a family. They don't have a story. No one says how grandma met grandpa and how everyone is disconnected in their universe. And that's why, unfortunately, around 20, we created this, in 20 years, we developed this suicide ideation in children and teenagers because it's from a lack of belonging. Before, when we look at our anguish, who here hasn't listened to, those sad songs, and we would record them on our cassettes, international soap opera songs, and we would start crying to those songs. And when we couldn't date the person that we wanted to date, or our girlfriend would cheat on us with someone else, we never really thought about death unless it was the person's death. We never really considered our own. We would think like, oh, you're going to die. I hope you die. I hope you drop dead. But we would, listen to the song and move on. Nowadays, we had repertoire at the time. Our mom, our dad would come and say, oh my God, it happened. This happened to me, and tell a story. Nowadays, you're on your own. We don't have adults. Everything is kind of really separated, segregated. First, they start with cutting. So they try to make the physical pain bigger than the emotional pain. And then it's 30 seconds are enough. So since I cannot stop the pain that I can't even name that I'm feeling, I have to destroy the person who's feeling that pain. So 30 seconds are enough without you being supported, without an adult in the room, without a sense of belonging, with a scattered sense of responsibility, and you have these tragedies happening. That's why life in several seasons is inviting us to have a personal responsibility over our story, our lives, what we are building. However, and especially when we are teachers and parents, we need to develop an intransferable task of really educating human beings, being builders of capabilities and virtues to face a world. Because in my point of view, Cortella, today we have a generation that lives in a world that is more complex than the one that we went through in our teenage and childhood years, but they have less resources. Yes, and this actually brings something that I remember when Adriana Calcanhoto, a great singer, launched a song that is the name of her album, actually, that starts by saying, nothing is in its place, or nothing is where it should be. And this idea is very interesting because the speed of taking down some of the support areas that we had, we didn't leave elements where we could sustain really reciprocity, where we can build something that is not completely apparent, that doesn't stand alone and is left to exhibition, but goes to deeper depths of presence. It ends up turning adults into children, because we just talked about that. When we are scattering the responsibility for children, a lot of adults are also scattering the ways that they are facing. They are using other structures. They are fantasizing about things that they don't have through the world of celebrities, the world of fiction, a world where you assume that it's not me, but he is what I want to be, so I am him because he is as I would like to be. So we create a huge chimera, which is very dangerous. Freud was talking about the problems of civilization. He was saying that in 1930. So you can imagine now, pretty much 1 century after, how strong that is still. Without really talking really negatively or shining a negative light in this situation, what saves us is that we don't want to get real. We want to go beyond. We want to resist. We want to search. Or as Tiago de Mello has written, it is dark, but I'm singing. It's dark, but I'm singing. Is that it? Exactly. Let's hear it for them.
Você viu que espontaneidade?
Eu vi, super
Did
espontâneo.
you see how spontaneous? Wow, very spontaneous. I would like to thank Cortella and Rossandro for this first part of the philosophical coffee. Now we're going to go to the debate. So if you want to ask any questions, you can go to YouTube. We are now transmitting and we're going to select the questions for them. There's a lot of people commenting and sending questions. People who are following us on YouTube. But let's go to the first question. Well, Jaime said that it's great to see these two human beings who are amazing. Rossandro, I'm very proud of you. There's a lot of VIPs here as well from Piauí, Pará, Rio de Janeiro, Rio Grande do Sul, Minas Gerais, Mato Grosso do Sul. A lot of cities that came here. And someone said, thank God you're transmitting this live. I really needed this talk by these two geniuses. So thank you so much to all of you who are following. And the first question is by Fabio Menegon. So he's here in the theater and he wanted to ask, from anguish to hope, do you have the word resilience? And the question that he's asking actually to both of you is resilience the victory of hope over fear and sadness? Yes. It's the capability of understanding that we are not born with these resources, but we are able to build them. Maybe you were born in a family where your model of intimacy didn't favor hearing. You are capable. You can do it. I am with you. Perhaps you heard, who do you think you are? You're not going to do anything. You don't have a future. But just to talk about Sartre again, this is not set in stone. It doesn't matter why. Maybe we won't even find out why and what motivated people who heard us, because sometimes they don't even know. But it's important because you're able to identify patterns and correct them. And actually building in this process resilience, the capability of starting over. And this terminology that came to psychology in the 70s when we realized that some people were going through terrible trauma, and we were imagining that a very destructive childhood would generate right off the bat a dysfunctional adult. And a lot of people, regardless of the fact that they had very difficult childhoods, they were able to become functional adults. And the opposite was also true. People who had very qualified and apparently functional childhoods could become dysfunctional adults, because it wasn't about only facilitating paths or making them harder. It was actually about building a skill to face life. And then from physics, from the materials, we talked about the capability that objects have of going back to their natural state after pressure. So imagine your dishwashing sponge. When you press it, it will compress, but when you let it go, it will go back to its original state. So resilience is much more than going back to the previous state. Since we're talking about many seasons, we say the man never comes back the same man, and the man is never the same. When we develop resilience, it's actually more than that. I don't know if you know this, but when we break a bone, the callus that is formed is stronger than the bone. So when you have a soul that is hurt and is now healed, it is stronger than someone who has never been hit at all. So sometimes the pain that you have, that you feel is meaningless, perhaps is only creating in you the necessary competency for a more difficult pain in the future that you wouldn't be able to face if you hadn't developed the resource today. And when we look back, we think, okay, now that I'm more mature, I thank the circumstances of my past, which built in me strength to face the circumstances of the present. That's why resilience and hope have a deep relationship. And it's worth mentioning that if we think about resilience only as a possibility of adapting to a condition, which means going back to a stage where there's no rupture, it won't necessarily be full of hope. It can be just an accommodation. One day I saw Rodrigo Mendes talking about that. because he was young, and now as a writer, he's older. But when he was going into university, when he was young, he went through robbery. He got shot and he became tetraplegic. And today he's also dealing with people who were also victims by many different conditions in life. And in this debate, he was showing the importance of adding the idea of resilience to the notion of plasticity.
Because if I look resiliency only, I can handle this the way I am without losing myself, I'm going to be on the same place. When I'm talking about plasticity, the idea that he had is, I don't want to get confirmed, getting okay of being a tetraplegic, because I'm not going to say this. I want to be in a different way, and I can be in a different way, but not the way I was, because I'm not going to get back to stop being a tetraplegic, but I don't want to be this person that stays in the same place. So I want to take another step when I have a different condition. And I want the idea of hope as not only a desire, as refusing something, as denying something that can be in a different way, in only calming down with things as they are right now. So we have a question sent by video, a psychoanalyst that she was part of Café Filosófico this year, and she was watching on YouTube, and you can see her lecture. Let's see her question. Hi, Rossandro. Hi, Cortella. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you on this so sophisticated discussion. So the question that I wanted to ask you is a little bit like this. We know, reasoning, thinking, that the pain is part of life, that some problems we cannot avoid, but how can we face this? How can we handle this to bat in some transformation when we have so many elements that numb us, that we don't see how this can work, but at least can help us to support a little bit? How can we do this to be part of this? It's just that. Just that. Pain is a symptom. It expresses something. It says something. The pain itself is not a pathology by itself. When it's a continuous pain, we need to try to understand what is producing this pain. In this sense, the same thing is life. It's an indicator. I don't need to solve the pain. So I need to go after what's the source of this pain. Of course, you know that worse than learning by pain is not learning anything with the pain. It's much worse than learning with pain is not to use the pain to learn something. So I don't need to desire the pain to learn something. So when we say in English, no pain, no gain, of course, that we're talking more about the idea about effort than necessarily about something that's painful. Of course, many of the things that I have learned, they came here in a playful way, not in a painful way. A lot of the things that I was able to know about, it came in a pleasure way, and others don't. So when you ask, and this is a great question, how to handle with the pain that we have with life, I think that the first step is to understand that it's a possibility, but it's not mandatory. The second thing is not something that's final, because if it is, indeed, it's not life anymore, because life is a possibility of pain. It's not a pain that we're going to have through the entire life. So the conception, the awareness about this, it's an important step. So I'm going to use this way. The first way of taking the cow off the pasture is to know that the cow is there. Yes, it's to have awareness.
Você sabe, Cortella, que quando a gente
You know,
fica
Cortella,
pensando na
that
dor,
when we think
tem
about
que olhar do
pain,
ponto de vista clínico,
looking at the clinical point of view, the psychological point of view, when the person is facing so many pains at the same time, that the person cannot face this. So we have a failure in resiliency. One thing is to ask someone to overcome a grief of a person. A different thing is to ask someone to overcome a grief of an entire family that just died in a car accident. One thing is to ask someone to overcome an abuse condition. The other thing is to a person to overcome different conditions of abuse. Sometimes we need to see which resources I have. If I have someone that's tired of my daily routine, that I have huge sacrifices, so I can have a life that's not even worth it, that sometime I leave at 3 a.m. to get a public transportation, to go to work, and then get home at late that night and overcome my anguishes and pains. A lot of people, they try to give some condition to this pain with drinking issues. A patient came to me with the death of the father. That was someone that used to drink a lot, and this was part of his childhood because the father would come drunk. And I asked him, how was your father from Monday to Friday? And he mentioned a different man that would wake up on Sunday ashamed for everything that he did, but he didn't know how to apologize. And the only thing he could do is to go to work, to provide to children what he didn't have. He didn't have education, so they could have a life that he never had. So he noticed that he had a father that was not that guy that during the weekend with a lot of anguish and not knowing how to handle that. After leaving the construction site that he used to work, he would go and drink a lot with his friends. During the weekend, he was the man that on Monday would do his best, but he was also a sick person. So I need to look the person as a whole. I need to see the full character of the best effort. And I realized when he told me that some of his brothers loved their parents, because when he was the father from the Saturday father that was drunk, they were considering the father from Monday to Friday that would make an effort to provide things to them, and they knew that their father didn't have those things. So the pain is going to ask us, which resources do we have? And nowadays we see when someone has a pain, I need to know what are the resources and who is close to you. Because depending on who's besides you, doesn't matter the pain you're going through, you are able to overcome this. It's amazing the strength of someone that feels loved. Just one person can make a difference in your trajectory. That's why so many times, as you have mentioned, the teacher is the only adult in the room and the only person that's looking with a hope to the other. So when you have pain, when we look with hope, not the one who says that we are not able to do this, it's the biggest contribution because it doesn't require any big effort. It's only providing to the other in deep pain to provide hope that the person cannot have, but we can see because we know how strong that person is.
A Ana Paula Andrade pergunta de
Ana
que
Paula
forma
Andrade is asking how we can nourish hope in our lives when it seems that we are trapped in the most challenging seasons of the soul, as anguish and sadness. I use an example that's not mine. It's from Rubem Alves, that he has a distinction of optimism and hope. He used to say that optimism is it's easier. Optimism, he would say, is when outside from you, the life is on spring, and inside of you, the spring is there. There's a coincidence about everything going right outside and everything going right on the internal side. So being optimistic is easier. It doesn't take effort. Hope, he used to say, is when it's not spring on the outside, you need to make it grow inside. So it takes an effort. So the question is how you make hope to grow, to be full, to see, as Rossandro mentioned, what are the means that you have to face that, so we don't build a fantasy about your own capability, and to see when and how much time you are going to dedicate to face that, what you can have a reality that's more favorable, and third, with whom you can count on. So you can do this because by ourselves, we cannot take these steps. So hope creates a body. So we remember when we had some discussions in some movements, we have a good view of hope, but it's not the case of classical philosophy. The Greeks, they elaborated a conception about hope that's more feeling like condemned of something than an exercise. That we have Pandora myth, when all the bad things of the world are happening, the box that she opens, there's only hope. So to us human beings, there's something that's torturing. We think that's going to get better. And the classic Greek conception, this is the core of tragedy. Tragedy, not by any chance, the biggest way of building this in the Greek theater is because there's no hope except in the human perception, because the goddesses will do whatever they want, and we are just something that they are using to play with. So one of our joys to refuse this. We are able of finding path, not just one path, but as we have path, we have a path, we can use this path and tell to the gods, not always. Yes, we have the spring being created inside of us. We can awake this with different elements. Cortella mentioned a few, that your support network, the people that you can count on, your internal resources without feeling smaller, so trying to seek professional help. But there's another important point about this. If you go to Medline, that's a huge database of medical research. You can see the researches about spirituality, faith, and health. They are huge, showing that a lot of time there's an amazing resources that's available, is to give this hope, not only on people that disappoint us, but in an entity that's going to last longer on its behavior and its attitude, the sacred, the God that some call like this. I remember that my grandfather used to recite some poems, and he used to talk about faith, when he used to say the faith is a leap in the dark to the arms of God. If you don't have faith, you are not going to leap, and you're not going to get the hug of God. You are in the dark. Sometimes hope is in the dark, to know that you're not by yourself. Sometimes it's to know that when everyone does not want to be around you because they don't want to hear what you're saying because you are depressed, there's an instance that they're still taking care of you. To have this conception, it's provide resources for the person to move on with the journey, to know that this God is not going to do a task for you. That's to recognize the fall, that's to rise again and move on. Because there's no hope that tells you, I'm here to you while you are suffering. It's a hope that states, I'm here with you while you're suffering until you are strong enough to stop suffering, with the attitude of understand that's not the world that will comfort you, but you are going to rise. So the faith is a huge resource for hope. Today is the first Café Filosófico for Rossandro. Cortella, I think that made 10 of this. So we talked about the videos that we have, so you can have access of more than 20 years of lectures. Ana Sui that asked a question is there. You can see different lectures of Cortella. Now you can see this one again. Now we're going to check a part of the videos that we have of the beginning of Café Filosófico of a speaker that I think that you know that's going to discuss with this topic. I'm going to show the video.
E quando se pensa em futuro, eu
So
fico
when you think
assustado
about future, I'm afraid about some situations, and I think about how many children they leave this possibility, the possibility of a frightening future that's going to take them. And I want to talk more about this, that takes them to live the present with an intensity that's insane in different situations. After all, we are, and maybe we are like this. Sometimes I mention this, maybe we are the first generation of human beings that doesn't take care of the next generation. We are doing what we call, or withdrawn the future. So when we withdraw the future, we are spending the future by anticipation. In the general overview in the human history, the current generation takes care of the next one, the resources, the survival, the possibility of means of existence. However, our daily routine, the way that we are changing the conditions of collective existence, as ego, it's more present in front of us, we are wearing out the existence conditions for the future. And we say this to children and young people.
anos se passaram.
Yes, 20 years have
Nós
gone,
não demos conta.
and we still haven't fixed it. After two decades, not because I said it, because the past is showing how much we were able to even worsen the situation. So some things in life, it's better to start as soon as possible before it's too late, and this is one of them. It's true.
Uma coisa que a gente aprende é que a gente
One
passaria
thing that we
horas.
learn is that we could spend
E eu fico perguntando se
hours upon hours hearing him speak. And I keep thinking, is he a person or an AI? I don't know if you've thought about that. I was asking him backstage. He sasaid, "You're an AI." And I said, "No, I'm a
Mas
BI."
Cortella, a gente quando olha,
So,
você falou,
Cortella, when we look at what you said so well, in a so well put way of withdrawing from the future early
que a gente sempre
and drawing hope from a generation that we were able to feel in the climate, in the
construções de conexão
shearing out of the social tissue, disconnection among families, crisis in all of its sense, in all the senses of the word. When models cannot guide the present and the future is not clear so that we can continue, which demands from us more responsibility. I think that the people who are here today obviously are a part of a group of people who are always thinking about life. No one hears a psychologist and a philosopher speak if you're not bothered, if you're not thinking, if you're not restless. But also if you don't have a feeling of responsibility, because at the end of the day, we ask ourselves, and I ask myself this every day, which is, what can I do with what I have so that the little that I have is even more useful for the transformation of the collective? What can we do so that we're not going to feel like we're going to watch Cortella speak in 20 years and feel like it's even worse? Can't we maintain our hope that we can not only stop processes, but also start healthier processes? I think so. And a part of it is what we're doing here today, having the diagnosis, bringing it to the surface and realizing what's happening, because with the diagnosis, it's much easier to start treatment. Even though it's not pleasant to hear a diagnosis, without it, I don't know where to begin. And it's the same with self-knowledge, self-love, self-awareness. You know, coming here for the first time, imagining I'm a foreigner, I come to São Paulo, I saw Cortella, and I said, Cortella, I'm in São Paulo and I want to visit the Ipiranga Museum. And he was going to ask, where are you? Because only by saying where you are, I can say where you should go. If I was at the airport, it was going to be one path. In Congonhas Airport, another. If I was at a hotel, it was going to be a different path. So where are you? 20 years ago, Cortella showed where we were. And unfortunately, what we saw is that we are straying farther away from the path. So now where are we and where do we want to go? This is a question that we should ask ourselves as individuals, but also as a society.
Rossandro e Cortella, infelizmente chegamos ao final.
Rossandro and Cortella, unfortunately, we are at the end of our event, but I'm not going to finish just yet before going over to you guys for your final remarks. One of the things that scared me the most when we talk about hope is, given our mortality, when someone asks me for my final remarks. Because what I hope is that I won't have my final remarks, which means I hope that my final remarks are really a conjunction of all the words that and the remarks that I have said in my time of existence, in a way that through the many seasons that I've lived, and we have already said that a lot of times in life, how many springs, how many winters have you seen? How many summers have you seen? I have been through several summers and winters. Maybe I'm in the autumn of the patriarch. But all of those analogies, they show us that we need to continue to resist, which means we need to continue being capable of having hope. I use this expression a lot, which was used by Paulo Freire, which is you need to have hope, but it has to be from the verb to hope, because some people have from the verb to wait, which is in Portuguese, they are the same verb. So to hope is having action, going for it, not giving up, being capable and remembering. That's exactly the idea, that there are no final remarks. What exists is what is the full set of your life. And I would like to finish by talking about a poet that I like, Leduivo, who said that the work is the work, everything else is just else. Work is your work. Everything else is else. Those are my final remarks.
Meu amigo, se tem uma coisa que você já é
if there's something that you already are, is eternal. Your life and your life's work are eternal. He compliments me so much that this makes me very happy, because the best compliment is exaggerated. Well, I think I'm doing something that a lot of you would like to do, telling him how amazing he is, how much he is present in our lives, his way of speaking, his unique voice and tone really marks our lives and our existence. So as the final remarks for today, I would like to talk about ordinary life. Today, Cortella, we have a movement in society which kind of lessens everyday common life, as if a common life is ordinary in the bad sense of the word. As if going every day and coming back home, eager to see the people that you love, even though no one knows you, even if you don't have any followers on Instagram, but you know you're loved, you have people waiting for you, as if that is not extraordinary. All of our lives are in itself extraordinary. And let's not confuse that with visible or famous or successful, because Cortella and I personally know people whose success is not built in a behavior worthy of how they're seen, because it's not always a match. Ordinary life is anything but ordinary. Everyday life is extraordinary. Getting back home and getting home, making coffee, and maybe not coffee, just juice because it's too hot, and sharing with people you love what you heard here today is extraordinary. Living here with everything that we try to build with you in your mind today is extraordinary. So look at your everyday lives as extraordinary. And so that they can become even more extraordinary, stop comparing your life with someone else's extraordinary lives, which are ordinarily made up as something exceptional, so that you can truly see the gifts, which is being who you are every day. Because as Caetano says, everyone knows the pain and the pleasures of being who they are.
Muito bem, louva a todos também.
Obrigado, gente.
Muito bem. Cortella, Rossandro, muito obrigado.
Cortella and Rossandro, thank you so much for today's event. Thank you, Ribeirão Preto, for the warm welcome that you brought for us and our whole team. I'll see you soon here in Ribeirão. And until then, you can follow our schedule on YouTube. And now they're launching the book. So if you're a fan, right when you're leaving, we have an autograph session. And I'll tell you now, outside of the theater, on the foyer, you have the team waiting for you if you want to get your autographed book. Okay, so Rossandro and I are going to be there. If you have some of our books, you can come and we will be very happy to sign your books. And there's a difference between an autograph and a special message. Since we have a movement of a lot of people today, and this is what we like, the book will have your name and mine. Rossandro will write his name, I will write mine, and you write yours, okay? So then, we're all together.
Como eu sou grupo de risco e o Rossandro não,
Since I'm at risk, I will wear my mask because I want my final remarks to be long years away. And the book is also for sale, guys, just so you know, you can buy it. Yeah, and we're gonna be there in a few. Thank you so much. Thank you, it was great.
O amor é sentido da mesma forma pelos homens e pelas mulheres?
A gente precisa então entender como é que se formou historicamente.
We need to
na
understand
história mais
how this was formed historically
porque ele é uma construção
and
cultural.
how this duality happened. The logic of the love shelves, gender and emotions. In culture, there's a strong
Não apenas interpelam
emotional pedagogy that not only talks about behaviors, but also ways of feeling. In our culture, men learn to love many things, and women learn to love men. Sunday, 7 p.m. for Café Filosófico.